Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughan, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who work in digital and choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. Learn more about us and join the movement at togetherindigital.com. Everyone, please help me welcome today Anna Covert. She is joining us from, as we were just talking before we hopped online, Hawaii, where she runs Covert Communications, the state's largest marketing firm. And now, if you're like most business owners, you've probably asked yourself, are my digital ads actually working? Am I reaching the right people? Is the website really delivering on what my customers need? For those of us who are in the digital space and marketing and who are listening, members or not, we know these questions because, again, we get the screws put to us, right, when it comes to reporting and the data and the ROI or the ROAS, whatever term they like to use. Well, these are the questions that Anna spent her career trying to help businesses answer. And what makes today's session particularly special is that Anna is going to share the same high-impact strategies that she details in her best-selling book, The Covert Code. We'll drop the link in the show notes. She has worked with hundreds of businesses from local startups to Fortune 500 companies, and she's developed a remarkably clear approach to something that often feels pretty daunting and overwhelming, especially for us business owners, making digital marketing actually work for your business. So we've got a packed hour ahead with lots of questions, but as always, live listeners, we would love it if you would share any questions that you have in the chat and we will get those asked. But we are going to break down everything from fraud prevention to creating smart budgets that make sense for your business. She's going to help show you how to take back control of your digital strategy and make sure that every dollar that you spend is working for you. Anna, thanks for joining us in the Power Lounge.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're really glad to have you here with us. Excited to have this conversation. Kind of sort of wishing it was in person, but you have helped to build Hawaii's largest digital marketing firm. What sparked your journey into digital marketing and what made you decide to share the strategies that you've shared, which are a little unorthodox, right? In the Covert Code rather than keeping them trade secrets?
That's a really great question. I think it really starts much younger in my life. So I'm going to take you on a little journey, right? So my story echoes that of many. I was a girl born in the early 80s, the year just before the Apple computer. And that's 1983, for those of you trying to do the math. And my story was that of many. You know, I was born in part of a very fluent community. I attended private schools. I had a safe family, and I had every opportunity to succeed. The problem was that I'm dyslexic, and no matter how hard I worked and work hard I did, I still struggled in school. The result, I cried a lot, and it wasn't fair. And that didn't change till much later in my life, thanks to the unwavering support of my mother, but as many of you might have guessed, the computer. It opened up my world to opportunity. Finally, I could read my own handwriting. I had tools like Excel, Word, and others that helped level the playing field for me. And technology has done just that for billions of us, made our lives easier, safer, healthier, and fairer. But as the saying goes, every technology is both a burden and a blessing. What I've found is that those very same strategies that have helped my career as a business or digital marketing expert flourish have had the exact opposite effect on millions of business owners. And today it is rare that a business would have no experience with online advertising. Yeah. Even the smallest mom and pop has a GoDaddy or Wix website, has tried to boost a social media post, added some SEO enhancement, something. And as a result, not a day goes by that I don't speak to business owners of all sizes from all industries with the same outcry. That, by the time they've reached me, they've already been through 3 or more agencies, often spending hundreds of thousands of dollars without the promised return. Yep. I had clients crying to me on the phone. Where had I been? And finally, I had enough. We had to reach people faster. We had to do something. And I realized that with my expertise, partners, and technology, that I could make that meaningful change. And luckily, Forbes agreed and helped me expedite my book from pitch to publishing in 11 months. Because the crisis is real. Yeah. And really, you know, when I was going to college back in the day, there wasn't digital advertising. You know, a website was a virtual brochure, and there really wasn't social media, which I'm grateful for. But I actually started the learning. I had to learn it all myself, and that started when I had a back injury in my late 20s. And I was going to a physical therapist, and she asked me if I could build her website. And at the time, WordPress was really taking off. And I had a boyfriend, and he was very good looking, but not the sharpest tool in the shed. And he had been telling me that he was building WordPress websites. And I was like, wow, if he can do it, I'm sure that I can do it. So I reluctantly told her that I could for therapy trade. And that's what started my learning. I built my first WordPress website. I started my first AdWords campaign. And then from there, in the last 15 years, it's just built.
I love it. That's fantastic. And again, I think I relate to you so much in a lot of like your journey and what you've done and why you've done it, because it's like there is this, advertising, marketing, digital especially, it's such a great mobilizer for businesses and small businesses especially, and they are at such a disadvantage oftentimes, and it can feel, like you said, very overwhelming, and they do get burnt sometimes, right? I think, and I haven't plugged this new podcast yet on this podcast, but I need to. We started another spinoff podcast called Together Marketing Rescue, which, Anna, I would love it if you came on and listened. It is for our members only to listen to, but the podcast episodes themselves are live, so you can go out and find them in the world under Together Marketing Rescue. And the goal is kind of in line with like what your mission is like we are trying to figure out how do we marry up small businesses with marketing service providers that are smart about how they use their money and their time, right?
It's got to be fair,
right? And then they report well, and like they're being ethical. And I'm not saying because you're a big business that you're not ethical, but you have more overhead, you have more layers of complexity, and not every small business can afford nor needs a big agency to do the work that they need to have done. And so the goal of Marketing Rescue was to really help solve a problem both for our members who own marketing services, who are struggling to find clients, and all these amazing small businesses, mom and pops, that have really kind of maxed out their own capabilities, because like the first episode is my friend Kristen, who owns Sweets and Meats Barbecue, and they know barbecue. That's what she's there for. Like her and her husband, that's what they're doing. They don't need to be worrying about like, are their social media ads performing? They need somebody to help them with that responsibly and ethically, because they're just good people who started with a grill and $800, And so I love so much about what you have done and what you're doing with your book and with the way that you're approaching marketing, because it's really helping a lot of people like grow their business, which means food for their family, school for their kids. It's such a great equalizer in helping grow the economy in the places where we need to be growing it right now. So I'm kind of curious, you service a lot of clients, to get back to you, a lot of clients across different industries. How do you help businesses find their authentic voice in a digital space too? Because that's a challenge, right? And this is very now, like you said, when we both went to school, digital was not a thing. And now we're just all a grain of sand in the desert that is the internet. How are you helping clients work through that?
Well, yeah, I think you made a really interesting comment there, because a lot of, I always hear every day people talk about SEO, right? And, I have to be in the first page of search. And did you know that there are over 250,000 websites that come online worldwide every day?
Woo!
170 a minute. So, the idea of search is changing. There, like I said, we're a needle in the haystack. Yeah. And the most important thing is really in today's day and age, to have that be authentic, really share the real story and have a value proposition. And brands of today, they don't just have a mission statement. They're proving that that's part of their business. Yeah. Right. Like, how are we going to evoke and share? Okay. We care about the environment. Okay. Well, what are your proof points of that?
Yes.
And those little authentic stories are really what AI can't mirror, right? Because it's in the real world. And we see that that's really, really important for that what to do to stand out. Yeah. But, every business, I think, is the most important thing is to determine, who is your audience. Mm-hmm. And now with digital, the good news is that we can reduce waste by really drilling into how we're going to target that person and move them through the purchase funnel.
Mm-hmm. I love that. When it comes to helping your clients find their authentic voice, I mean, I'm already thinking about the examples of the few episodes we've recorded, one with Crystal, who owns Magnificent Morsels, and one with Kristen, who owns Sweets and Meats. I mean, sometimes for those two, I'm just going to give an example to help maybe you answer this, but, one of them in particular, like that whole notion of them starting with a grill and $800. I was like, I just feel like that more people need to know and understand that. And then like, I only just learned that like all of the recipes they used were handed down throughout her husband's family. And that to me as a consumer, right, it makes me choose differently. I was wondering if you could kind of dive a little deeper. Like, what are the ways in which you're helping your clients, like, be specifically more authentic? Because we throw that word around a lot in this industry. And then I don't think people understand how to actually get to that point.
It really boils down to storytelling, which is one of the most common behavioral science strategies that we can utilize. Because, humans, that's how we all began, around campfires, sharing stories. And so it's like, that's the story. It's about the legacy. It's about the community. It's about, what is the story? There's a reason why you're here. Why are you? I mean, everyone, when they start a business, they really are, they have to think they're going to provide something that's not being provided in that way. Well, and how did they arrive at that decision? Because it's a big decision to start a business.
Yeah.
Your barbecue sauce is better. Well, why is it better? Well, right. Because, these are the stories that make up the reason why we knew that we had to, the passion was there, to be able to invest our time and love. And it's all about love. If you can't show that love, then the consumer won't respond to it. And you won't last. You won't make it. So just really sitting down and thinking, we always go through these brand exercises with clients and asking those questions. Like, if you were a car, what car would you be? If your brand was a car, what music would they be listening to? What is the personification? And what are the stories that they tell people about who they are and why they're here and who they'll be in the future?
And do you ever find any clients, and I'm even thinking about this from like an individual personal branding standpoint, people holding back because it's like they want to have like a certain ideal self out there in the world, or an ideal product or brand without any vulnerability? I mean, how much vulnerability do you think is required for a brand to really reach authenticity?
I think in today's day and age, you have to be completely vulnerable. Like, you should not hold anything back, because those are the key differentiators. Like, we call them leverageable points of difference. What make you better, unique. And if you're holding back, that's the brand of the past, where we were in control, like, how media worked. Before we had social media and online, it was a one-way discussion. We told the brand, we had print, we had radio. It was a one-way conversation, brand to consumer, and then you could control it. Right now, with this dialogue that's happening, the brand has to realize that they can't hide, because people will figure it out, right? And then once that trust is lost, it's impossible to get it back.
Yes. Oh, I so agree. Such good advice. Thanks for letting me dig in more with that question. Let's talk a little bit about a part of your book that emphasizes a lot about reaching the right people at the right time. And how has this targeting challenge evolved over your 20 years in digital marketing?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think it's related to the topic we were just talking about, because, before, it was back to that one-way conversation, right? And we could control the dialogue. And even with digital in its early stage, and to some degree, when I say early, I mean, even the last 5 or 10 years, what's happened, right, is that we are treating it the same way we treated any media, right? If I wanted to advertise online, I would go directly to that company. Let's say it was People Magazine. And I have a media buy, and I'm on their site. And now I'm available to anyone who comes to people.com. But that's blanketing it out there. Is that same person the one who is actively seeking or interested in my product? And the answer is maybe, but you're wasting a lot of inventory and marketing budget on everyone. Yeah. And today, with these digital tools we have available, the most important part is to reduce waste and increase, and that's what I think all comes down to, reducing waste. The consumer, don't want to see a power commercial or like a power tool commercial or a diaper commercial, right? And as a marketing person, I don't want to show my ad to someone who's not interested in it.
Right.
And so this targeting and the ability to say, okay, are they raising their hand for these products? Are they, and I'm a big believer in universal consent, and I think a lot of companies miss it. Marketers have been those ones who have always been the abusers of data, we'll call it, right? And reluctant. I mean, I talk to clients all the time about, the data in their database. We don't want to get rid of any of it. Well, why, right? why are we holding on to it like squirrels? Like, like, oh, these are all of our acorns. Well, and there's a cost associated with that. There's risk associated with that. If someone, it should be just as easy for someone to opt in as opt out. I might be interested today in giving you my email for a 10% off coupon, but tomorrow I decide I don't want it. Remove them from your database. You to pay to hold them into MailChimp and any of these programs. Yes. You pay for texting. There's risk to your domain if you send too many emails and they spam them. And, and same thing with data. I mean, with California consumer protection and other global standards, the rights of the consumer are important, and that makes marketing better because you are going to only be speaking to people who are wanting to engage with you.
Oh my gosh. There's so many implications to what you're saying, Anna, and it makes so much sense. And I just wish we could kind of scream it from the rooftops for the amount of money that gets wasted on like over indexing on impressions, the economic impact, like not the economic, but the ecological impact on those things. It's like one of those things I never even knew until probably 10 plus years into my career. That like all of that, you'd think that, it's all going into the ether. It's all on the internet. It's all cloud storage. No, it's taking like a toll on our environment when we blast the world with a ton of advertising without being responsible as to like who we're trying to reach and why. And again, we have to treat time and attention like it's gold, not just on our own end, but for our consumers' ends, because we're all just sitting here being very like overwhelmed by choice, right? And then we end up defaulting to like whatever's there. So right time, right place is still so important, but I think like leaning that into that even harder for a number of reasons makes a whole lot of sense. I think it used to just be a passing thing we said.
If you buy something, and then how many times have people listening to this, they bought something, maybe they wanted a vacuum cleaner and they bought the vacuum cleaner, and now they're getting bombarded by vacuum cleaner ads. Well, I bought it.
I know it's done,
right? And that's just waste. So that's not that's using old strategies of list acquisition and things where, I mean, for instance, I give this example in my book, like, if most, top of funnel companies that are doing awareness advertising online, that's top of the funnel, they are using lists, right, to acquire data. And I'll give you an example. So let's say that, and eBay is one of the largest sellers of data. So let's say I'm going to a baby shower and I go to eBay and I buy a baby stroller, right? Now I'm on a list that says I'm the parent of a toddler, but I'm not the parent of a toddler. I bought one product one time. Now I did work for the hospital here. I built this baby app for the women's hospital. So now we buy this data and we're now trying to serve ads to someone who is a parent of a toddler. Well, that's why, and this is one of those red flags I think we'll talk about later, is that if they tell you, it's going to take 60, 90 days for it to work. Well, that's a red flag. Right? The reason why is because they're trying to match consumers in ways that they're, they can't be matched, right? And today with the tools we have, we know, I would never serve an ad to someone on that list. I wouldn't use a list like that. But there are hundreds of metrics. If I was a parent of a toddler, I would be going to mommy blogs. I would be doing 100 other activities that would identify that, yes, not only am I a parent of a toddler, but I'm in market for this specific thing now. And that can change. Once I got that stroller, now I'm on to the next thing. Right. So that's why it's so important to pick the right partners and the right data sources and be, open to, if it sounds too good to be true, it is.
It probably is. That's so true. And it's funny. It's like, instead of, as marketers, I think the point you're making, at least what I'm hearing, is like, we have to look at the correlation of behaviors versus one trigger behavior, because this has come up and happened in the past too. Because I as well have worked on products for like women, and we used to do like, we don't anymore, like when Mother's Day type of posts or emails. And I think it was Target at some point that was able to kind of like approximate based on women's purchases when or if they became pregnant. But it's like
also it can be risky. I don't want to interrupt you, but that's actually something that's very risky for the consumer. And we're seeing that already where, because of their buying behavior, they're starting getting like this woman, a young girl, like a teenager, she was pregnant and her father found out, about the story. Found out because of the ads.
Exactly what I was getting to.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly what I was getting to. Or, you have that instance of the woman who the birth, something happens and, she doesn't able to carry out the pregnancy, and then that's devastating. And then throw on top of the devastation, a bunch of ads thrown in your face about babies. Like, no, thanks. Right. That's not the right time. That's not the right place. But you're right. We have enough data out there if we can learn how to use it properly and use it well versus, only thinking about like their advantage, thinking about how it will impact others.
Yeah.
I think it comes back, and I think it actually proves to be, like you're saying too, more effective and more impactful because it truly is the right time and the right place,
And
not just the
ethical,
assumed right time and place.
yeah, right. And ethical, like what is our role as a
Mm-hmm.
business provider,
Yeah.
and service provider, and
Mm-hmm.
because the now trust is so important for the consumer, and
Agreed.
we know that those who even share their privacy and how they use data are getting
Mm-hmm.
more adoption than those who aren't.
Yeah.
And once, would someone shop at Target again? I mean, probably not. I
Yeah.
wouldn't.
No. No.
Right. So it's a business decision that's going to pay off.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Speaking of trust, in your book, you talk about how businesses should never trust anyone to bid on their behalf. Can you talk us through maybe some examples of what that is and what that means and where you've seen this go wrong and what should have been done differently?
Yeah. So, that's a really great question. Sorry. It comes down to that companies, like, let's talk about Google for a minute. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
that we could talk about, but
Sure.
Google, right? Anyone, they make it sound so easy for you. It's called smart bidding, right? And what they say is that, hey, don't worry about, anything. You just tell us what you want to spend per day and we're going to handle the rest.
Mm-hmm.
I think is we can all understand that they, they can't know what our customers worth to us, right? And what is a conversion? And when there's a shopping ad, for example, it's much easier to determine because there was a credit card that was swiped and a transaction was occurred on that visit.
Mm-hmm.
But for B2B or anything else, if I sell a lot of solar, I do a lot of solar work. A conversion is a lead. But did we meet with that customer? Were they qualified? Right? Did they sit with us? All these different things. So if we're letting an algorithm say, "Oh, it's worth this," well, they don't know the whole story. Right. And the same thing with zip codes, like back to solar. Not all zip codes, I might cover California, but I think we can agree that there are different territories in California or zip codes where they're higher income residents. Not everyone is worth the same. And they can't know that. It's your business, right? You have to be the one who's going to know and be in control of that process.
Yeah.
And so they'll spend all your money and there
Yeah.
you are wondering, well, where's my ROI? Well, you let it up to someone who knows nothing about your barbecue sauce,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the, kind of easy examples. Another one is that the media, unlike traditional advertising, where there's a fixed insertion order, like meaning that I'm agreeing to spend $5,000 on a print ad. This is what I'm going to get. This is my column width and length, and this is where it's going to be distributed and whatnot. Online advertising is a real-time auction happening 24/7, meaning that it changes daily based off of seasonality, environmental issues, even the weather. Right, we see it affect online behavior, competition. A lot of times we see big companies will do what's called flighting. So let's say that I'm back to solar, like a Tesla or a big company like that could decide they're going to launch a new product and they're going to spend $1 million online in California in these 2 weeks. Right. Well, that then is going to push all the bids up, right? Because they're bidding very, very aggressively. Well, if you're not paying attention and you're not really like looking at your data and what you're spending and how many people you're reaching, we call that search impression share. Well, then you might make some bad decisions. You might all of a sudden be competing with someone who has 5 or 6 times the budget you have. Whereas if you start to really realize you are in control, and while there's a lot of things we're not in control of, we can at least make decisions quickly and decide, okay, well, today I was bidding, or yesterday I bid $5 and I reached 30-40% of the audience. Now that same bid, I'm only reaching under 10%. Well, what's happening in the market? Right. And am I going to, radically try to adjust, or am I going to just wait it out because those flights don't last?
Right.
And so those are the kind of reasons why you need to be in control. And if you let someone else bid, what they're going to do is to spend all your money. And like the last one I'll give you is Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. So and it's all, if you remember nothing else, just remember that their job, right. And they want to help you. I'm not saying that they don't, but they're going to spend all your money no matter what. Yeah. That's why Facebook, they won't promise you any, they give you an estimate of impressions and clicks, right? It's not a promise, right? So the trick here is to give it enough time. So if I have if I want to spend $500, well, give it a month to spend the $500, a lifetime budget. Because if you do a daily budget or a short-term window, what's going to happen is that no matter what, by the end of that budget, by the end of the day, they will have spent all your money.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know what happened, right? Did those impressions ever get served?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is that no, they don't. Because how do we know that the impression was ever served, right? And so for our listeners in traditional advertising, if I run a TV commercial and I want to know, did it run? I can call Nielsen. Nielsen records every TV station in the country. They can pull up a report and show me that, yes, my spot ran. This is how many people were tuned in. If grandpa slept through it or someone left their TV on for the dog, well, that's not their fault, right? And it's fair. Scarborough does it for the radio. There are third parties that follow print publications and make sure they're distributed. There are companies that stand on the side of the road and click billboards as they pass by, or click cars as they pass by, billboards, to confirm impression share. There is no third-party oversight online at all. You have to believe the media company that what they've said in terms of impressions. Oh, I served 1 million impressions. Great. How do you know that?
Yeah.
Right? And that's the bottom line. There are ways that you can, there are protections for that and for bots, and with the rise of the bots, now half of all traffic online is fake, and they're getting smarter and smarter. So, using bot protection, picking the right partners that will allow us to put a third-party pixel into our ad to see that it was viewed. There are so many ways to be taken advantage of at every level, by the publisher, by the browser, by the, so I write about all that in my book, but really understanding, that you have options. And if you trust the other third party, well, then that's your fault that you trust it.
Yeah. You're paying, I guess you're kind of paying for that inconvenience. So just might as well consider it like a big old convenience fee at the end of the day. So what are I think you gave some good strategies and tips and ways in which we could start to look into and make sure that, I think part of why people go to the bid on behalf, well, one, businesses do it, we know, because they can make a quicker buck, right, for the convenience factor. But us as marketers, it might be more of like time constraints. So maybe what would some tips that you would have for marketers who want to do more of this, where they aren't using the automatic bidding, but they have a multitude of clients that they're trying to serve? Like, how do you kind of manage all of that?
Yeah, it's actually really not that challenging. And on my website, the Covert Code, I have free resources. You can download a checklist for Google, and you can just follow the instructions. And within 20 minutes, you will have saved 20% or increase your conversion at the same value. I'll give you another, this is a really easy one, right? If anyone has Google Ads and they're on their computer right now, log in and you go to your settings, campaign settings, go down to location. Right? You might, let's say I want to target people in Hawaii. Okay, well, right underneath the location section, there's a little hidden setting there. And it says, location settings. And you turn it on, and there are two options there. One is the default from Google. Right? Okay. And it says, target people who are located or have interest in my target location. Okay. Right? That's recommended. Yeah. All right, then the one right below that is target people physically located in my location. Now, let me give you an example. If I let Google do what they recommend and that they automatically default, let's say I'm back to solar here. I have a solar company here in Hawaii, and I'm targeting people in Hawaii. Well, you have interest in Hawaii. You're coming on vacation in Hawaii. So you're looking at hotels. You're looking at activities. You're looking at all kinds of things, restaurants. Where am I going to stay? You have interest in Hawaii. Now you're back home in Ohio and you want solar, right? You go online, you search, boom, up pops my ad. You click on it because it's hard to tell a location from an ad, right? And you see, oh, well, this solar company's in Hawaii. You click right out. 30% of budgets or more are spent because people are allowing that one default.
Yeah, wow. That's impressive. Thank you so much. I love all this, very more in the details, nitty gritty, tactical stuff. And I know our members do as well, because they're in this every day. One of our live listeners, Jillian, was just commenting how insightful this was, because she sets up campaigns every day that utilize this automatic bidding. And she's trying to fight it, but love being able to see different viewpoints, since her clients are always set on these lists and these automations. But I think if you can go back to them, Jillian, and share some of this data of 30% waste. Does that sound good to you, client? Maybe we try a different route, We
only want to target people in our zip codes, right? Do you have clients in Nebraska? No. Well, then let's not make sure that they're not getting ads, right? And another easy one that people can use, and it's one of the ones that they always hide, right? So there are 3 different networks, right? There's Google search, right? Meaning that you go to Google and you search. There are Google partners, which they won't even share a list. That should be a red flag for you. But why won't they share a list, right? There's all these other partners that they say they can serve ads on their site. Then there's the display network, right? Which is basically the same thing as the partners, but just a display ad. Right? Okay, so how we buy media online is a really important segue here, right? So anytime that I go, let's say that I'm doing display network, and I know remarketing is one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit, but and so whoever you pick to be your distributor, in this case it's Google, every site that they serve my ad on, they have to pay that site. So if my ad shows on People, Google has to pay People, right, for that impression. Right. Well, how does Google get paid? Well, they get paid by cost per click. Right? So a lot of people don't know this, but it was a time a couple of years ago where they were like worried about going bankrupt. Okay. And it's a shock. People are like, what? But the problem is they were so big and so bad, and they were they were like no one could compete. Right. And they were serving millions of impressions.
Yep.
But they were only, some of these ads they had 8 ways to bid back then. You could only, some people were paying like 20 cents a click. Yeah. Well, Google realized, oh my God, they had these bills that they couldn't pay because they were now having to pay for every ad. So what did they do? Well, they did 2 things. They changed all the bidding strategies. There's now only 3 ways. 2 are in Google's control. The only one you can use is max cost per click. And then you can set it. So you can say, I want to bid by max.
Oh, that's great.
So I always start with like a $5 or $3, right? No matter what it is.
Yeah.
Set that's the max that you're willing to spend. Right. And then we're going to use exact match keywords to make sure that that's what's being shown. Right. But so now, then the other thing that they did was they deployed bots to click on their own ads to make sure they could pay their partners. Right? Yep. So, and for that reason, my favorite partner is Complexities. And actually on my website, if you go to the partners section under resources, I have some affiliate links. We do a donation to Maui for the fires if people sign up using my account.
I love it.
But within 7 days, it's only like $65, right, for the big plan, and you will immediately. So it blocks the bots, right? Well, the first bot will be tracked, will be billed to you, but then after that, they block that IP, and then what that's going to tell you is that the only way you can do that really is through Google search. Does Google search cost anything to Google? No, they don't have to pay themselves if they show an ad on their own site. It's opportunity cost. What they're doing is saying, okay, how many advertisers do I have who meet the criteria? And now it's a bidding war, right? Yeah. But it's just an opportunity cost for them. It doesn't cost them anything. So only use Google search. Don't add partners. Don't add display, and at all, right? And no matter what they tell you, it's not going to be good for you, right? The bots are clicking on it and you can't protect them. Then get Complexities and connect your Google Ads account, and you'll immediately see that you're saving 30% from day one.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah. I can't wait to start doing some of these things.
And the checklist, you can go download the checklist on my website.
I love it. And I love all the resources and all of it. It's just so awesome and generous. So, I mean, we're kind of tiptoeing around this already. But and I don't know if this is just the one of them or one of many, but I was wondering if we could kind of talk through some of the bigger red flags that digital marketing experts, how do you know if they might be a fraud?
Oh, yeah. So there's some really easy ones. So the first, you're going to ask them a couple questions. And the first question is, how are you going to prove to me that this impression ran? Yeah. And you're going to go,
deer in headlights.
Well, because if you, and a lot of times, I memean, the fact is they may not be able to, right? And so that's a red flag, right? And I always have a lot of clients ask, I'll call the client, a potential client, and they're like, we do remarketing. I'm like, that's great. I've been to your website. I haven't seen any ads. That might be because I'm in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Do you ever see your own ads? Oh, well, maybe. Well, no, it shouldn't be maybe. Do you see your own ads? Like I see my ads all the time, right?
Yes.
So you have to see it to believe it, right? That's an easy one, right?
Yeah.
If you're Googling yourself and you don't see your own ad, that's a red flag, right? But how are they going to prove it works? What is the protection against invalid traffic? Do they use bot protection? And are you paying for invalid traffic? Right? Yeah. The answer is no, you're not, right? And this is how we're going to track it. This is what we're going to do about it, right? And then you shouldn't pay for invalid traffic. There are partners that will, on the top of funnel who will share it with you, and then you won't pay for it. And then the other one is, when it comes to one of the words I hear all the time, and I have a whole section of my book about it because it's so egregious, is the idea of geo-targeting, right? Or geofencing,
Yeah.
And it sounds too good to be true because it is too good to be true, right? What they'll come to you and say is, oh, guess what? We can, you're interested in the military? Great. We can put a fence around the military base and we can serve ads. Okay, well, great. How are you going to do that with the technology available today? Because there's no location tracking on the phone anymore.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, well, how are you going to prove that? Right. And then there are some partners there are some better ways we can do it. But basically, it's if you have like the cable companies, if they have control of the IP, then we do know it's called addressable inventory. We know their house is there because they have the internet and then we know, right, that they're there.
Right.
But other than that, how they're doing it is based off of list acquisition, back to that. So they're buying a list of people in an area that match a woman and this age. We think because of a third party that they live there. And then they're going to try to serve you an ad, which is ridiculous. How are they going to serve you that ad? How are they going to, on a computer, there's cookies, right? And cookies, we all probably have heard of cookie degradation and what does it mean and all that, which we'll get to. But on a phone, it's called finger ID mapping. So there's no IP address on your phone, right? So how they're looking for the connection is based off of an email that matches somewhere that they do have. And they're trying to connect it, That's why in apps, a lot of apps, they have location tracking. That's one of the ways that they can try to associate. But then how many ads can you serve? How often are they in that app, right? So you have to be very, very careful when people throw around these terms, right? And then you're like, okay, great. I want to believe you. I do want to believe you. Prove it to me. Prove to me. And, so if let's say probably a lot of people are listening right now, I was going to an event, right? And you have a booth at an event. Wouldn't it be wonderful to geofence this conference center and then serve ads people who attend? Well, yeah, that'd be the dream, right? Okay, they're going to say that they can do it and no problem. And then you're going to ask them, well, what is the frequency that you're going to be able to serve these ads? Yeah. And they're going to hum and haw and you probably will get back something like a frequency of 3. Over what time? Well, 30 days. Okay, well, do you think that with all of the chaos and all of the things you consume daily, that 3 impressions over 30 days is going to be enough for them to move? No, it's not.
Not going to move the needle.
Same thing with your Facebook ads. If you look at a report after and you look at the frequency, it's going to come up usually in every industry is around 1.5. Well, 1.5, that's a weird number, first of all, right? Yeah. How do you have a half impression? Right? But that's not enough to move someone from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel. They say it takes 7 to win. You need to see something at least 7 times. Yes. And, and that's the easy way. I mean, I have more kind of math and details in my book about how the way that I, use digital online, right? Because there isn't any critical mass messaging equation, right? For success. Because just back to how would we ever know, right? Because it's a dark hole. Google's in control of everything. If you've heard of this antitrust lawsuit and you look at the graph, I have a graph it might be on my website, but I can share with you later. And it just shows basically there's 3 parts of the buying, right? And Google is making money at every single part. There's no way to serve an ad online today where Google doesn't make money. Yeah. Let's make sure they don't make all the money, right? You can pick, I can even buy Google from the media exchange. I don't have to buy it from Google. Right. Yeah. So you must see it to believe it. You ask them, how are we going to prove that these impressions are served? Because another thing that can happen if let's say you're on, CNN, an ad gets displayed, and how it's on the media exchange is there's a little blue cone in the top corner. If there's no cone, that means that person went directly to CNN and bought a package, like traditional advertising. Right. But if you see the cone, a lot of times an ad will play and then another ad will play right behind it, right? It'll play again, or another ad, or your same ad, right? That's because they're delivered stacked in a container. So there might be multiple ads that are served or stacked in the container. Right? But that doesn't mean that you were viewed that ad. As I'm scrolling down the page, it's up there, but it's not viewable to me. Well, a lot of people will charge you for it being delivered to the page. That's what's called the viewability score, right? So how are we going to prove that the impression ran and was viewed what percentage, a lot of times I say like, okay, we're looking for like a 50% view rate because people are scrolling and, we can't have it all, right? Or 75%, but you have to be in control of that and know, especially with YouTube, for example, right? If you go right to YouTube, first of all, there's no bot protection and they can skip after 7 seconds. If I buy it through the media exchange, I can guarantee the view through is 75% or 100%, and I can validate invalid traffic. So you have to know that, you're in control, you pick the right partners and then you ask the right questions and they won't be able to answer them if they're fraud.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I would also say that, like, I would go so far as to say that I just don't think that there's enough education in general, which is why I appreciate what you're doing so much for marketers themselves not to behave in what feels like a fraudulent manner of like just not knowing and not recognizing and realizing, because I think oftentimes, digital, like we said, it wasn't even like a line of coursework within school for us 10, 15 years ago. And even nowadays, the tools are changing constantly, right? So like in all of the mass hysteria over going to G4, right? It's like they're always evolving and they're always changing. And I think what we sometimes forget is like what you're saying, we have control. But we also have to recognize that they have the data, which means you can't implicitly trust every platform to basically be performing to your best interest in dollar. You have to do what you're doing, Anna, which is asking the questions, digging harder into the data, and being a smarter marketer at the end of the day, which is what makes me so excited. Yeah, and I think a really good
point there. It's something so important. I always tell clients that a lot of times I hear there's a lot of fear, right? Oh, it worked before. Why isn't it working now? Right. Or if I stop the ads, then what's going to happen? Well, okay, if your ads, any ad you're doing should have some kind of trackable, measurable result. If it doesn't, don't spend more. I mean, that's one of the number one things I hear. Oh, they told me I need to increase my budget. No, right. Don't be afraid to push pause and regroup. Look at the website. What is a mobile experience? We're getting traffic. How do we get more from that traffic? Because before you spend $1 on paid search or anything, you need to make sure that the website is converting. And that's the number one thing.
Gosh.
And then if they do change, because they'll change and it's not working all of a sudden, well, hey, let's regroup, and it's better to cut your losses, Tomorrow will come, and you can, but you don't want to spend $2,000 waiting for that the realization.
No. I mean, again, small businesses, it's definitely not ideal.
Yeah.
Let's talk about search marketing, because we've brought it up a couple of different times. I'm curious, like, if you have some advice or thoughts on some of the more counterintuitive things you have learned about this when businesses should or shouldn't invest in it. You said, so I want to go back to something you said a little earlier too about search versus display even.
Yeah, I think that I can give you an example of, so we're always, because of this evolution, I guess it's off the same topic, we're always testing new things out, with clients. And so a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, Performance Max campaign came out. Probably people are oh yeah, Performance Max. And it sounded great because I always loved that Gmail targeting, and which they got rid of. Inside the Gmail, right? So this was like a sound too good to be true. It was like a blend, right, of YouTube, Map, Gmail, search, display, and that was based off of a smart campaign, pretty much, right? Performance Max means that you have to have a daily budget, and Google's going to serve the ads where they want, right? But we had a client, we're like, let's try it out, right? And right from the get-go, well, this is before I knew about bot protection, right? But which it wouldn't have worked, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so the campaign starts, and all of a sudden we're starting to see so many conversions, and we're like, oh my God, it's a holy grail. Like, this is amazing, right? But then our Slack channel's pinging, and the client's like, oh, we're getting all these forms filled out on their unbounced page. But then we start looking through them, and they're bots, right? And it's clear. It's like, Mike@botzilla.com and all these. And so, it was, and a lot of times, especially with companies, when you're not the one who's in control, right? Or you're the business owner, you're busy, you're doing other things, You might be looking at a report and like, oh, wow, this is working. But then you have to say, well, is it really working? What are these conversions that Google's tracking? And do they matter to you, right? So that's, kind of one of the pieces of like that we try things out, and, but back to that you can't really trust it, and I think it all depends. What tool you pick really depends on where you are in the purchase funnel. And this is a really important factor, because what we've been trained to believe, right, and is that digital advertising is all trackable, right? and it should happen immediately, right? And to some fact, at the bottom of the funnel, so for people listening, in case they don't know, so the purchase funnel is there's awareness is at the top, right? Consideration, intent, and action. Mm-hmm. So in my example for solar, I'm aware solar exists. Okay, great. Consideration, my bill keeps climbing. What am I going to do about it? Intent. I'm going to call my neighbor. They have solar. I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to go online now and search for solar. What do I know about it? I'm going to start learning. An ad gets served. They click on the ad. They go to a website, and now they leave, right? So a lot of times people make the mistake of not understanding what is the customer's journey, how long it's going to take. Once they go to the site, what do we expect it to be before they come back on their own and convert? Right? Yep. So what we determined with hundreds of pixels is that the solar journey is between 28 and 32 days. Yep. Right. So if I was looking at a report and I was spending $5,000 a month and whatnot, and I don't see it working in 15 days, must not be working. Well, you haven't given the customer enough time, right? Yeah. Shopping is shorter window. It's called a 7-day time decay. If they didn't buy it within 7 days, chances of them buying it slip dramatically. It depends on the type of industry and how long. The more expensive it is, the bigger investment, the longer the journey will take. It could take a year. Understand that, figure out. And that's when you say, okay, if I'm going to spend money and before I get there, and so the idea of tracking, right? And this is something we talk about every single day, right? Like everyone wants to give everyone credit, right? Well, everyone wants to take credit. It's called attribution. So in your G4 account, people listening, go to your settings, click on attribution, and you want to make sure you have data-driven attribution, and you want to include paid and organic. Right? Then 30-day, click recommended. And then right below that, there's going to be another option that's going to have 90 days as the recommended setting. Change it to 30 because you want everything to be equal so that you can evaluate what actually did happen. Yeah. So, I'll give you an example. So let's say I clicked on an ad and I go to the website and I don't convert. I don't fill out a form. The only time a UTM is tracked, right, is when it completes on the same visit. Google Ads can, now that we're going to give it this authority, can take credit for up to 30 days if they come back from an organic channel. Let's say now I see a remarketing ad and I click on it and I still don't convert. Now I see a social media post. Finally, I click and I convert. Well, if you're looking at a traditional report, you might think that you've had 3 conversions. One from Google, one from the remarketing company, and one from Facebook. But you didn't have 3 conversions. You had 1 and they all assisted. Right? So don't get buried in the weeds of like, I can't track everything. Just, everything online. It's a environment. It all works together. And then you have to use your little detective hat to see, okay, well, what was the first instance? I always give the first visitor, the greatest value, that source. But everyone else participated. So when you want to, when the boss says, we need to, make more money, we need more leads, you're going to allocate your budget appropriately to support the length of the time. Hey, boss, if we spend $10,000 today, we're not going to get that back for 60 days. Yeah. We're not going to get it back for 90 days. Right? What is the expectation? Because if you're not sharing that, plan, then what's going to happen is you could cut marketing too soon before you had the chance to re-engage that customer on that journey.
Yep. And what you're talking about a lot there is remarketing too, which is a great segue into my next question is if you could share a success story where remarketing delivered unexpected value for clients, because I think it is a kind of an undervalued and often not like something that you put into place in a smart or strategic way.
I got one of my favorite examples is my own example. So this was almost 10 years ago. And I was doing some work. I'm here in Hawaii, but I was doing work for my first solar client through another agency in California. And they were a SunPower dealer, a big SunPower dealer. And SunPower recently went bankrupt, but they were the largest solar manufacturer for 36 years, right? And they're big. They had 800, 900 dealers. Anyway, one day, eventually that client did come over and work with us here directly. But one day I get a call from SunPower. And I'm like, I'm this tiny little agency with like 2 or 3 people. And I'm like, is this a joke? Who's pranking me? Why is SunPower calling me? And it was from, I've seen that, sorry, my furry terror. She's like this big, but she thinks she's a big dog.
Right. She's got little dog syndrome.
someone from SunPower, Paul Sullivan, he had gone to Solar Technologies website. They were doing better than others in California, so he wanted to see why. And he went there, and then he left, and he was getting cyber stalked all over the internet, right?
Oh my
and he was
gosh.
like, whoa, he was like, the client was everywhere. So then he goes back to the site, scrolls to the bottom, sees powered by me, right? Goes to my site, same thing happens. So that's what prompted him to call. He's like, I'm seeing you everywhere. Like, do you want to be part of our dealer or network? And I was like, wow, yeah. But if you want to get an example, and that was back then when we just had display. Now, with the power of programmatic, we have full funnel remarketing. And guys, this is so important. Like if you go to the Covert Code to download your checklist, I'll start to remarket to you full funnel. What that means is you'll see me on television, right? Yeah. You'll see me in an app. You'll hear me on a podcast sponsorship if there's radio commercials, streaming. Right. And that is so powerful because now the storytelling, and that we were talking about storytelling earlier, can you really share your story in a banner ad? And the answer is no, right? No. But it's used for the memory of it, right? But if now, I'm only spending $300 a month on what you're about to witness.
That's amazing. I love it. And I love that you're using yourself as the example too. That's how you got to do it. I love it. That's amazing. All right. I've got one more question before we go into our power round. But listeners, if you have questions, don't be shy about throwing them into the chat. We definitely want to hear them. And I feel like we need to have you come back and do like a masterclass with us because I'm so itching now to like get into like behind everything. Look at all that we're doing and being
we're doing one in April. I think we're doing one.
Oh, that's right. We are. We've already got this in the bag. This is like the blessing of being super efficient. I'm like, I should do this thing. No, Amy, you've already done it. On the back. That's right. Because we talked about the masterclass first, and then we decided the podcast versus the other way around. Yes, I'm so excited for you in that. And shout out to our friends, Bobby at the innovationwomen.org website, by the way. That is how I found you. And that's how I found so many amazing speakers for this podcast and our masterclasses that our members get to enjoy for free. So yes, definitely check out that website. And Anna, thanks for refreshing my memory. All right. Last question before we go into our power round. What is the most common pushback that you get from clients about digital marketing and how do you address it?
I think it really is that, it's not working because they can't track it exactly, right? The CRM, we're seeing so much, we're seeing organic leads, we're seeing, direct traffic, but we're not seeing Google paid search.
Yeah.
Well, guys, and that's why it's so important. We talk about it all the time that even if you're using UTMs, even if you're using these things, it's only on that same visit that we're going to get the credit. And so, we've got to remember that if we're doing better, it's because it's all connected. Right.
Yes, yeah.
And just because we can't immediately track it like we used to, especially if you're doing top of funnel. If I'm running a CTV ad, can someone click on it? No. Right. But we have other metrics to say, okay, if they're in the same household, we know that there was a secondary view through. They went to the website later, right?
Yep.
That's not going to show up in a CRM. Nope. It's not going to show up in a UTM. It may not even show. So it's like, really educating them. And I make clients go through like a digital media best practice presentation.
I love it.
Yes. Set expectations.
Good for you.
Data. I've been screamed that on the phone. I remember this one client, he was like, but he was right. He's like, I'm glad you like your data. I want you to like your data. But on my side of the page, the numbers aren't adding up. And I realize it's because, we're talking about impressions, we're talking about clicks, we're talking about bounce rate, and that's great. But it doesn't matter if it's not making the cash register ring. Yep, right. And so it's like, well, are we giving it all credit? Right. Is business doing better overall? Yeah. Right. And what is the benchmarks and what data we're going to be looking at to say if it's working?
Yeah. Can I just lament though for a second and just say, I started off in direct mail and I've done TV and I just, all those other, I'm just like digital, we just get the screws put to us because there is so much that's trackable. But then I love that you have your clients go through that basics of digital media training because we do spend so much of our time educating people to understand that just because the numbers are there do not mean they're wholly accurate, do not mean they all interconnect and you can follow somebody from point A all the way to the cash register point, whatever, D, E, F. Right. And so it's just one of those things I think advocating for, again, ethical digital marketing, helping people understand and know the ins and outs of how to spend their money wisely, how to not waste other people's time and money. I mean, it's also important. And I love that you are taking the time to do this because it's helping you even stand out in the market and in the
another thing I'll
industry.
just say really quickly before we get into the power outage is one of the other things to look out for, and this is an easy one, right? Is when traditional media companies, which they're all doing now, they're selling you digital packages outside of their network. Because we already have that trust, like you bought TV from Joe for years and you trust Joe.
Yeah.
Well, ask them those same questions because they're also reselling and they don't know. And then in an effort to stay relevant, they're selling things that they don't know about, and it's scary for them too. But you have to. That's why it's even more important because they don't want to be unethical, right? They don't, but they don't know any better. To your point before,
exactly. All right, let's get into the power round. I'll keep an eye on the chat in case any questions drop in. I love this one. It's what is the one metric most businesses obsess over that they should just ignore?
It's cost per click, cost per 1,000 impressions. And the most important thing is it working or not?
Yeah.
I'll spend $100 on a cost per 1,000 impressions if I can see that there's an ROI that is within the cost per lead, cost per sit, cost per sale that I'm after.
Oh, love it. I always like asking that question because it always opens my eyes up to a metric and looking at it in a different way than I did before, including that one. So awesome. Name 3 questions every business owner should ask before hiring a digital marketing agency.
Well, that is, how are they going to prove that the impressions ran?
Yeah.
How do they validate that clicks are real from real people, not bots?
Yeah.
And I think that those are probably, and then how are they acquiring data?
Yeah.
Is it lists?
Those are great questions.
Those are it.
I love it. And then I think this is also good to know for our marketers that are in the house listening, which is most of our Together Digital community, so that they can inform and educate themselves and empower themselves to be good advocates for, responsible digital marketing, but then also good stewards of their clients. So I love this. What's the minimum budget for a small business that needs to start seeing real success from digital marketing?
I say $2,000 to $2,500. We usually run, especially with search, we'll do a $1,500 launch. So if you're a new advertiser,
for one campaign,
not a campaign, for the whole account.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so if you're a new advertiser, you'll get $500 from Google when you spend $500. Yes. So we spend $500, then we spend their $500, and then we spend another $500 usually, and then that gives us a baseline of what is possible. And if we have to make adjustments to landing page or try, creative to increase conversion rate, if I'm not getting the conversion rate I'm after, then we stop there for a minute, we regroup. But then the rest should be on remarketing. You must do not spend any money on search or anything unless you have a robust remarketing program in place.
I love it. That's such great advice. Well, and then not only that, because it's continuing to move them down the funnel, but then also it's making the most of the opportunity. And then I lost what I was going to say because it's so Friday. It was a good
Aloha Friday.
I know, right? So what was it? We were talking about. It wasn't the remarketing. It was your comment before that. Say that again.
Budget.
That's what it was. Thank you, my friend. Gosh, you are the other half of my brain today, girl. It is that. It is budget. I think a lot of small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, right? I've worked with clients that are like Fortune 500 and like bigger, and where they've got money to kind of spare, it almost seems like sometimes, because they aren't scrutinizing. But then when you are a small business, oftentimes you will forego marketing altogether, which is such a detriment to you and your business because they think that it requires a shit ton of money. But you're talking $1,500 to $2,000 that could actually...
even $500, $300. I have a client, Yaya Hawaii, and we spend like $300 on full funnel remarketing, and we see it on the TV. People are... And then you look bigger than you are. If you're driving the traffic to your site, that's the mothership. Then follow that person. They're the one who's engaged. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
Right. Yeah. And don't think you have to qualify everybody. Look at it as you're disqualifying. You don't need to, you're not for everybody. It's not always their time, their place, and the thing that you're not the thing they need. Good conversation. All right. Last question, and then we'll call it a day. Social media. We haven't really touched on this one very much. We've talked a lot more about Google and search and things like that and some programmatic. But as far as social goes, how do you feel about organic versus paid?
I would say paid is more, if you're wanting to start something, you start with paid because, again, the goal is to drive traffic to the website and then to see if it's working. No one's going to see your ad in Facebook or no one's going to see your organic content unless you pay for it anyway, right? You have to boost that content. You got to grow a fan base, right? It's pay to play now. It's just like any, and one of the most important things is they're trying to keep that customer on their app, right? They don't want you to leave, right? So, but with an ad, then at least the focus is to get the traffic to the site. And so, and it's a big time investment. And a lot of clients, get so overwhelmed with, well, everyone's doing social media, I've got to do it. No, it's not the case. It's a big time commitment. You have to spend money to be seen, period. Right. Unless you're, and there's some other ways you can go around it. It's one little quick tip here for everyone. Is if you're, the second you post something, send it to all the team. Right. The faster that you get the likes, that tells the algorithm to show more. Right. So a lot of people are like, oh, no one's liking our content. Well, you need to like your content.
Hello.
Right. Like your content. The faster, you can get their logins. You like their content for you, But that's a way, because it's all based off of engagement, how it was active engagement. That's a like, comment, share, watch, or hover. Right. But bottom line, unless you're doing that, that's a content strategy. But most people are in social media because they want to get traffic. Right. It's also, it depends, e-commerce sites, it's a lot easier, right? Social proofing is really important for them. And people will be like, shopping in, I buy so many things from Instagram. Everything I see, I'm like, oh, I want that one, But for anything else that's not shopping related, it's really not very often that it's successful.
Now, this has been so insightful and really helpful. I have so many more questions, but that's okay. We're going to keep talking. I did want to give another mention to members, if you're listening, which I know you guys are. Make sure that you check out our social media engagement channel on Slack. It's doing exactly what you're saying, Anna. We basically ask people, if you're doing social media and you need engagement, post the post up here, and if we've got 2 seconds, we'll help you give it a boost. And we do that for each other.
That is a wonderful service. Right? That's worth having a membership, period.
Right? Exactly. Get that boost. So definitely check out that channel if you haven't already, members. It's been a lot of fun. And honestly, I get a nice little quick dopamine hit when one of our members does some amazing content and I get to go support it and like it. Cause I'm busy. I'm not always scrolling through every platform to protect my sanity. So it's nice to just be directed to the other good things anyways too. So definitely check out the channel.
You don't even see it necessarily.
Share
a lot
of times,
exactly. Think about your friends and they're like, oh, I went to Egypt for Christmas. You're like, really? Like, you didn't see my social media post? No, because if you don't like, comment, or share, you're not going to see it. Exactly. Right. And so, this thinking that they're going to scroll and find it. Well, guess again, there's so many people competing for those same eyeballs.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Anna, we're just a little over time, so we're going to go ahead and call it. Although, like I said, this conversation can go on and on because there's so much good stuff to dig into. I definitely recommend you all go onto her website, check out the downloadable content there, get her book. And Anna, we look forward to your masterclass here in the next few months. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really wonderful to share. And happy Aloha Friday and Valentine's Day to everyone.
Yes, absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to see you all next week. Until then, keep asking, keep giving, and keep growing. We'll see you later.
Aloha.
Produced by Heartcast Media.